V8 Diagnostic. This is what I've learned to do working with experts like Dr. J. He did a 5-year PhD in hormones, clinical nutritionists, functional doctors. We have to work out what's going on underneath the hood of our inner V8, especially if you want to get away from this here and upgrade to this son of a bitch over here. And I created this image in ChatGPT, and that's what we want. Now, a lot of people feel like they can't achieve that. They're too old, or maybe they got really bad genetics. Now, even if you got less than awesome genetics, you can still do a lot. Now, how long is this going to take? Now, if you're a younger dude and you don't have too much going wrong underneath the hood, 4 to 8 weeks. Now, if you're an older gentleman like me, 3 to 12 months is what it's going to take, but you're going to know how to do that and to get to that end result so you can show up like a boss and get back into your prime. Now, before we embark on our journey down the road to figuring out how to get this V8 diagnostic and to access the worksheets, just want to play this video from Dr. J. Check this out.
It's not thriving. It's definitely suboptimal. It's frustrating, honestly. I mean, especially on the topic of testosterone, because if your testosterone goes down, just your health in general goes down. So that opens the door to a bunch of prescription drugs.
Yeah.
And so the pharma companies are very excited about keeping your testosterone down from a financial perspective.
Exactly.
As a business model, it's a good idea for them.
So follow the money, so to speak. And, we're not just optimizing testosterone. It's the hormones, it's the homocysteine, methylation. That might sound geeky, but you don't need to know any of this. I can show you exactly what to do and how to do it. Simple, easy, goddamn steps. And that's what I needed. So what we want to think about, if you want to build a lot of muscle and you want to drop the body fat and you want to lower fear and anxiety naturally and increase energy and motivation so you get out the door and show up like a boss and become the man you were born to be, we've got to also optimize for free T, because it's what perfuses into the tissues like the muscle to build muscle, goes into fat, drop body fat, goes into our moneymaker, lowers fear and anxiety, and increases our energy to get out the door. So this gentleman here, so I'll give you some case studies along the way here to show you exactly what can go wrong. This gentleman, he's doing pretty good. He's had okay T for a couple of years. He's semi-carnivore, but his free T way the hell down. So when you've got low free T, you can still experience a lot of the symptoms of low T. Because again, free T is the game. It's what we want to push up. Now, if you've got these symptoms, decreased energy, vitality, well-being, and motivation, you're probably on the downward spiral to low free T. And there's a lot of things that bring that down. I'm going to show you exactly what they are today so you can start taking them off the table. But, we're not going to drive into the symptoms of low testosterone. You just feel like your V8 engine isn't firing. You want to get back to that place where you feel good. So that's what it's all about. Now, the V8 diagnostic, its foundation is what's called blood labs. Now, what you'll learn over the next probably 20 minutes are the blood labs. You've got standard labs, which are ridiculous. They do not optimize you at all. They optimize a 4-cylinder, so you struggle. And that's kind of what the system wants you to do. Struggle with energy and all of that. Or you can get them into optimal range. And that's what we want to achieve. Now, an example of this is an inflammatory marker. So this is what shuts down testosterone, the big category. So there's basically 6 things, and I won't drive into that now. But I just want to focus on inflammation here. Acute and chronic low-grade inflammation shutting you down. Now, one of the markers for inflammation is a protein called C-reactive protein, high-sensitive CRP. And this gentleman is at 1.7. This is a recent blood labs from one of the dudes that we're helping. Now, the system would have you believe that 3 and below, you're good. Let's question that. And maybe optimal is a bit lower than that. So let's listen to what Dr. J says about this gentleman with a 1.7 CRP. 1.2, yeah. They'll flag
total cholesterol. So he's already there.
Yeah.
Yep. Nothing to worry about there. The trigs, you're right. That's the focus. B is high. I like that below 1. Inflammation. It's just, is he 0 point? He's 1.7.
Yeah, he's 1.7. We like to see what 0.5 is ideal.
Yeah, at least below 1, preferably 0.5 or below. Yeah.
Preferably 0.5. That's where we want to get it. And you heard what Dr. J said? Wow, that's high, 1.7. You go to your standard doctor, they'll say, you're good. And guess what shows up in your life? This. So this is Dr. Chris Masterjohn, who has a PhD in nutritional sciences. And based on the current scientific literature, if you want to get optimized, you do not want to be between 1 and 3. Why? Well, you've got that chronic low-grade inflammation, so everything powers down while you've got this going on. And guess what shows up for 70, maybe, depending on how great your genetics are? We've got cardiovascular, neurological disease, autoimmune, arthritis, cancer, lupus, fibromyalgia, and you feel like shit. You're fatigued all the time. And to compound that, inflammation activates more cortisol, so you stress the hell out all the time. So one thing that I want to focus on, there's information below about how to fix this problem, is what's called environmental stresses, right? Now, I've got a comprehensive and free environmental stress elimination plan, because these things are no joke. Even at low doses, they can tank your testosterone. And one thing that they completely abolish, probably the system wants this, is another testosterone that our body will make called DHT, dihydrotestosterone. Now listen carefully to this. These chemicals, the scientific literature has now elucidated, complete suppression of dihydrotestosterone, so it's off the goddamn table. But there's another thing over here that shuts it down too, and I'll unpack that in a moment. But why? What's so good about dihydrotestosterone? Well, on this study here, DHT has a 2 to goddamn 5 times higher binding affinity to your androgen receptor to build muscle, to lower fear and anxiety. And that's thing number 1. But thing number 2 here, it has a 10-fold. You see that? 10-fold higher potency at inducing androgen receptor functions. So it's like a magic trick. Now, these chemicals shut that down, so you're missing out on feeling really good. So this is what happens. Testosterone can do a lot of things, but here's 2 main pathways. It can go to the female hormone estrogen, or it can come down this other pathway and go to dihydrotestosterone. So this is 5-alpha reductase. It's an enzyme, and this is the aromatase enzyme here. Now, I will share with you towards the end everything that we've learned working with functional doctors that bias testosterone to go to estrogen. And there's 19. Now, the other thing that I mentioned over here is that there's a lot of spices that limit the production of dihydro and bias it to go towards estrogen, which is turmeric and polyphenols and curcumins. There's a lot of things that can slow that pathway down. Now, that certainly doesn't mean you can't have a curry and enjoy it. But if you're eating it every day, that could be a bit of a problem, because you may be missing out on dihydro and its power. Now, these are 19 things, and I'll unpack that in a moment or towards the end. Now, how much testosterone do you need? This is the question that I'm asked frequently, and I had no clue until I worked with these experts. They explained to me that you've got these things called CAG repeats. So in a nutshell, these repeats make your androgen receptor. And the more repeats you got, the longer the androgen receptor and the more testosterone you need to exert the same androgen receptor functions in your body to build muscle and to lower fear and anxiety. Now, the shorter the repeats, the less you need. So you could be at like 450 and have good free T, and you're good. You know, your body is supremely intelligent. So don't go on this train if you need really high testosterone. I want to get it really high, because too much testosterone ain't a good thing. And I'll show you why that's the case as we progress in our journey here. So let's just explore how we can start increasing the speed of testosterone production. Now, what I learned from working with Dr. J and these functional doctors, that inside your amazing brain, so this is my really elegant drawing of the brain there. This is the prefrontal cortex. Now, inside our brain, we've got this system called the gonadotropin releasing hormone system. And here's the magic. It's got a pulse generator. And every 2 to 3 hours, we can send pulses from the brain into the blood that pulse out LH and FSH. LH is a precursor to testosterone, and FSH is spermogenesis. So you're virile and fertile. So these hormones make their way to the ball sack, the testes, to make testosterone and sperm. So think about that. Every 2 to 3 hours, you can be topping up free T, because that's what you release into the system is free T. So why have a lot of people got low free T? Well, that's what this video is going to explore. Now, the science is pretty clear on this. If you get healthy men and you completely block aromatase, right? And I'll explain why that's impactful shortly. It increases both the LH pulse frequency, some more pulses of LH, luteinizing hormone for more testosterone. That's one. But two here, the amplitude, some larger amounts of LH to make more testosterone. So think about that. If we optimize the system to produce, to turn on the gonadotropin releasing hormone system's pulse generator, we can produce a lot of free T all day long, and we can feel pretty damn good and build a lot of muscle. Now, what kind of shuts that down? I'll come back to this, but basically when you've got too many endocrine disrupting chemicals, you shut down, or estrogen. So when you're making too much estrogen, it shuts you down. Your testosterone might only be 300 when you shut down. Estrogen goes up, we're shut down till the system brings estrogen down to healthy levels, because too much estrogen ain't a good thing either. And then ideally, in a perfect world, we want testosterone to be the negative feedback and shut the system down. So that's what an ideal world is, and we'll talk more about that as we progress. Now, the reason why we lose a lot of free T, it's three big things. And here's big thing number one, why we lose our free T. Now, estrogen, it's highly protective of the heart and arteries and microvasculature. Think about that. It protects us. And it also stimulates the brain to make more BDNF, brain fertilizer. So we want healthy levels of estrogen. It also helps with libido too when it's at healthy levels. And that's the point, right? Healthy estrogen. So when you've got oxidative stress in your body, and necrosis can happen, which is tissue damage. You've also got decreased hormone production when this is going on, DNA damage, reproductive dysfunction. So we want to take care of this oxidative stress, but that's what estrogen is starting to take care of. There's more things in your body that do that, but estrogen is a big player. So this is where your blood flow is around here. It's getting insults. It's getting a lot of oxidative stress, and that could be a lot of things, and we'll explore that as we progress. But your testosterone is taking a hit, turning into estrogen through aromatization here. So your free T, right, which you want up, is being aromatized into estrogen that protects you from a shitty diet or a bad mindset or a lack of vitamins and minerals or poor methylation or your liver problems. So we've really got to take care of that inflammation, because you can see what's going on now. Now, this study, this second study here, is really revealing some men have a deficiency in the enzyme that converts testosterone to estrogen. So with these people, accelerated development of atherosclerosis, which is heart disease, has been observed in male subjects with a deficiency of aromatase, right? And this study here, number one, protective effects of estrogen on cardiovascular disease and mediated by oxidative stress. So the oxidative stress goes up, free testosterone comes down, estrogen goes up, shuts down testosterone production, and you can see what's happening here. And study number three. So certainly go out there and do your due diligence and research this, but that's what we've discovered. Now, let's talk about how we can really start to optimize the system. And I'll give you some case studies shortly. But one thing that we've learned working with a lot of people and these experts, functional doctors, is that you need adequate vitamins and minerals to keep all these pathways turning 24/7. So this is Dr. Rob. He's just speaking to that. Listen to this.
That is one part of the equation, right? It works in the brain. The other part is the testicles. Do the testicles have enough of the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and cholesterol to be able to generate more testosterone? So there's two parts to that equation.
So did you catch that? Vitamins, minerals, enough healthy cholesterol. And I'll speak about what that is, because Dr. J, when he did his 5-year PhD in hormones, it was also cholesterol. So he's an expert with cholesterol, healthy cholesterol. So as you can see, this is how we're going to start to optimize testosterone production. So in males, you enhance testosterone production, and this is the mechanism by which this occurs, mainly through enhancing luteinizing hormone, the pulse generator, pulsing out every couple of hours, then increasing healthy levels of cholesterol of the testes. And I'll show you what that is with the recommendations of Dr. J, the expert. Then back over here, we've got to reduce oxidative stress, right? Goes back to that oxidative stress. We've got to take care of that. And I'll show you how to look at that. Then we also have to enhance the activity of the antioxidant enzymes, right? And we can increase that. And I'll show you exactly how to increase your antioxidant enzyme power. The more enzymes you've got, the more power your V8 engine's got to take care of that oxidative stress. Now, critically, as you'll learn, we have to normalize blood glucose, nice, stable blood glucose. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have carbohydrates. I eat carbs at every single meal. and my insulin sensitivity is great, my blood sugar is good, and I'll unpack how we can achieve that. Then you also have to increase blood flow to the testes. So this is a good vasculature system, good blood pressure, but also nitric oxide production. If you don't have nitric oxide production, you're not going to make a lot of testosterone and you won't have great blood pressure, which is a more stress equals more stress scenario. Then you can increase testicular weight, as you can see here. So even if you've got a bit of issues with, low testosterone over time, so that over time, low testosterone, as Dr. J explained to me, can shrink the testes, but you can get those testes back up to speed and increase testosterone production. And finally, recycle testosterone receptors. So we want testosterone to be shutting down testosterone production. High optimal, boom, shut down. Not estrogen, not these chemicals. Then we have to get our blood labs done to find out where our inflammation is and take care of that. Because when you've got inflammation, you've got low T and you've got more estrogen. Remember, oxidative stress and inflammation. Free T is aromatized into estrogen. And then we've got stress. So environmental toxins, that stress, heavy metals, haptens, chemicals, all that shit. Your mindset, cortisol, if it's off, you don't have a great mindset, that's going to shut you down hard. Now, blood sugar, hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar. And over here, number 5, metabolism, hyper, which is high blood sugar. So up and down all over the place, low T, free T. Then, of course, energy. If you don't have a lot of energy and you're fatigued, your body will not make testosterone. It is a luxury for the body to make. Then drugs like opioids. Now, number 6, our body makes an opioid, a natural opioid. It's called dynorphin, and it shuts us down. It shuts down the gonadotropin-releasing hormone system's pulse generator. And that's dynorphin. I learned from Dr. Rhonda Patrick all about dynorphin. I think it was 2019, would have probably been. She did a podcast with Joe Rogan and she talked about dynorphin. And it's responsible for a feeling of dysphoria, a profound sense of unease and dissatisfaction. Think about that. We're sitting down in traffic and we're like, Jesus, damn, this sucks. Well, we're chemically castrating ourselves from the good stuff, the good life. And it's also responsible and promotes pain, right? Emotional pain and physical pain. So when you're pushing yourself in the gym, you feel that pain, be cool with it, right? You don't want to shut down testosterone production. And the more that you tolerate that pain with good spirit, the more desensitized you get to it and the more sensitive you become to the opioids, the endorphins that we make post-exercise. So we've got to really start to think about changing our mindset. Like, this isn't fair. Blame this person, this happened. Just suck it up, move forward. Tomorrow's another day. Reset plan and just keep moving forward. So that's going to shut us down, the opioids. Cortisol is going to shut us down. High glucose and high insulin will shut us down. Low leptin, inflammation, too much estrogen. Remember, what we want to shut us down is testosterone itself. High level, shut down pulse generator every 2 to 3 hours, pulsing out, free T, build muscle. Lower fear and anxiety, get us out the door. But if we're making dynorphin, that's not going to happen because it also is responsible for distress. And what's that? Negative emotion, resentment, fear, anxiety, all of that shit. And the more of those feelings you produce, the brain's very good at reproducing those feelings because it's normal to produce them. The subconscious mind is like, yeah, fuck this shit. I'm out. You know what I mean? You've got to change our relationship to what winning in life means. So let's talk about taking care of this oxidative stress and inflammation, especially in the testes there. But it's all organ systems. If it's happening in the testes, it's happening in other organ systems too. So as I mentioned, homocysteine can be a big, big issue. And generally, you've got two kinds of people. You've got people that it's really difficult to bring down. And we see this. This was me. It took me a long time to bring it down. And it wasn't until I started working with these experts. And you got some people that's no problem at all. They've just got better genetics for it. Now, homocysteine is a big problem. As I mentioned, we need to get it 7 and below. And the problem becomes, standard doctors won't even test this. Right? I had one client last week ask his local GP because he's brand new. And he thought, I'll just try my local GP. And he flat out refused to test homocysteine. Flat out refused to test it. And it drives heart disease. So Homocysteine damages the artery wall. So, and then they say, oh, it's cholesterol. Well, what about homocysteine? What about oxidative stress inflammation? Why aren't they checking this? Just doesn't make any sense to me. So basically, when you got high homocysteine, plasma homocysteine, healthy kidneys help here too. You got diabetes, kidney disease, cardiovascular disease, migraines, cancer, bone issues, eye issues, cognition, your moneymaker starts to tank, hearing loss, infertility, depression, and there's big drivers, vitamin status, lifestyle, genetic mutations, as I mentioned. Like this is a polymorphism in the homocysteine gene. There's a few genes in that pathway, and if that's you, we have to work a bit harder to correct that issue. And of course, drugs. Now, here's a couple of examples. Like this one here, this is an Australian lab, and it wasn't flagged at 11.5. You know, but as far as they're concerned, 13.9, you're good. That's over double. And remember, legends, it's causing these lesions in your artery walls. It's just, I just don't understand why they're not checking. They flat out refuse sometimes. And then when you've got high homocysteine, what we see over and over again is low glutathione. So this one had this panel here, when we checked the advanced testing there, I think it was about 11. So I'll have a look. The panel's down here. There it is there, 12. So high. So they're, because these people know, the functional doctors, high at 12 there. So let's just go back over here. We see it over and over again. So you'll see you got low. So you got high homocysteine. Think about that, damaging your artery walls, causing lesions. Then you've got low glutathione, which takes care of oxidative stress and inflammation. Holy shit. And this is what's happened to a lot of people. They've got no clue. And the medical system blames the villain, which isn't the villain. It's at the scene of the crime trying to help out like cops do. Cholesterol. Anyway, now homocysteine and glutathione, you need good methylation. So you've probably heard about methylation before. So this one here, that's an extensive methylation test. And you don't need to get this one unless you've got the genetic issues. So, you know, I can guide you with that towards the end. But look what methylation does. Phase 2 liver tox, it's a heavy hitter in that. If your liver's not doing that, you're not detoxing jack shit. So inflammation and oxidative stress goes up and you get liver damage right there when you're not methylating. So it's responsible for all of these things plus a shit ton more. DNA methylation, gene regulation, detoxification, as we now know, neurotransmitter synthesis and metabolism. So these big mood swings aren't happening. Phosphatidylcholine synthesis, which is huge for bile acids, and every single cell requires phosphatidylcholine. Then you've got protein synthesis, fat ripping off the body fat because it makes carnitine, hormone regulation, energy, DNA repair. Damn, imagine if you're not methylating, well, you're not repairing your DNA. Viral suppression, mood and brain, histamine, allergies, sinusitis, rhinitis, and of course, homocysteine. So you can see why she goes up for a lot of people. I'll just play this video for you. This is me on a call with a dude we're helping, and this is with one of our functional experts that we're speaking to, and he's just speaking to how important methylation is. Check it out.
Part, but methylation is actually the end metabolism of estrogen. You methylate estradiol and estrone to methoxyestradiol and methoxyestrone. So that'll help clear the estrogen out too. But it's also important for energy production, phase 2 liver detoxification, DNA repair, neurotransmitter production. So getting those B vitamins, especially B12 and folate, at the right level is going to affect all those systems. How much active B12 and...
As you can see there, the functional doctors do it differently, don't they? So they're asking questions about what's your vitamin status? Are you looking after this? So it's completely different. And methylation is a big key piece of the puzzle. Now, what we're going to do now is just talk about two of the people that we're helping here. So this gentleman has been semi-carnivore for a few years, and a lot of the labs look really good. But the big problem here is just low T. So that's his only issue at the moment because serum's good. His inflammation is pretty good, but he does have some oxidative stress playing out. And a lot of his free T has been wasted by lowering inflammation. I'll show you what Dr. J says about that shortly. And we're also going to have a look at another gentleman. And this gentleman has insulin resistance. And you're going to see a completely different blood panel. And insulin resistance is the biggest thing that we see with low serum T, but also low free T. So we'll talk about both of those. So let's just get into this here. Where is she back here? So as you can see, what we'll unpack now is, where your iron lab should be and what to do to solve that problem. But as you can see, with you've got too much liver iron, your SHBG goes up. And this is where it goes back to the standard labs. Remember, 30 and 400, they say is okay. They've actually flagged this one because it's over 400. Now, where should our ferritin be? So that's iron storage. Where should that be? Well, I'll show you. And he's clearly got a lot of, so these two are linked. High SHBG and continual low insulin. And we'll talk about how that occurs and how to solve that problem too. However, let's just talk about iron right now. So when you get too much iron, and a lot of carnivores, probably do get too much iron, but it's really simple to solve. And I'll show you how to do that. But when you've got too much iron or too little, it ain't good. We've got to have optimal levels. So you'll see how what we're trying to optimize is getting the blood labs not too low, not too high. We're getting into this butter zone here, and that is peak performance for your inner V8. Now, right here, when you've got too much iron, you've got oxidative stress playing out, neurodegeneration. It damages organs and drives a lot of cancer. So iron is really toxic. It causes a lot of oxidative stress and inflammation. Now, to add insult to injury, if you've got a polymorphism in a gene called SOD2, superoxide dismutase 2, it can really cause havoc on your cardiovascular system. This is Dr. J just speaking to this gene if you've got iron overload. Remember, I'll show you how to solve this problem.
Heart disease. Yeah. So this one gene, there's really the two genes here, but the SOD2 gene is not a risk unless her ferritin is high. But if her ferritin is high, this gene gives her a 10-fold higher risk of heart disease, which is super high risk.
10-fold, yeah.
We want that to be 0-fold. So you got to make sure the ferritin is between 50 and 100, not just 50 to 500 or some kind of crazy nonsense.
Yeah.
Has to be optimal, not just normal.
Did you catch the range that Dr. J said? So your ferritin needs to be between 50 and 100. So that goes back to these standard labs. 400 is absurd. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, what that equates to is a lot of oxidative stress and inflammation. And that's a really big problem. Right, so this is where your blood flows and your vascular system. And this is this one here is basically just showing you what causes that oxidative stress and inflammation. And remember, your free T that you should be pulsing out every couple of hours should be topped up. But if you've got this oxidative stress and inflammation, the pulse generator will be coughing and spluttering, your V8 engine, and a lot of the free T is aromatized into estrogen. So we've already spoken about that. So you can start to understand how all of these labs can give you a framework to know what to fix. So these high ferritin levels that cause a lot of oxidative stress and inflammation. And also, we've already spoken about the high homocysteine. So he's got two big problems there. And he's also got a slight elevation in his blood urea nitrogen. And we can solve that problem pretty easily too. So that's kidneys. Now, the way that you solve the high bun there, the blood urea nitrogen levels there, is you could be dehydrated or you could have a little bit of kidney stress, and you can recover from that. But you could also have a polymorphism in a gene called the OTC gene. So people with a polymorphism in that, it's generally late onset, as I've got articulated here. So late onset. So in cases of partial urea cycle enzyme deficiency, ammonia builds up. When ammonia builds up, urea builds up. So you can see how that happens. And it can be due to dehydration, illness, or stress at different life stages. So if you're under a lot of pressure, under a lot of stress, that can push up your blood urea nitrogen. But there's another thing that can push it up too, a sick gut. Yeah, that's right. So we've only just started to discover this working with the functional doctors. So when you've got a sick microbiome, it causes fermentations of proteins and amino acids. So the proteins and amino acids that we're eating, the gut bacteria generates excessive amounts of potentially toxic compounds like ammonia and amines. So they go up. And urea goes up, and then you're out in your labs there. So if you've got a sick gut, this could be the reason why. And that's what we believe is happening with this gentleman. So putting that all together, once we do blood donations, so when you donate blood, that lowers ferritin, and you might need 2 or 3 blood draws to do that, then the free T should start coming back up. And when we solve the problem of the urea and elevations in glucose there, And homocysteine, like everything for this gentleman, should come back online. So we anticipate, well, the functional doctors do, that probably in about 3 to maybe 6 months, this guy will be, firing on all 8 cylinders. So that's just what you can see how it all starts to play together now. And, as I mentioned before, this SOD2 gene here that Dr. J mentioned, homocysteine causes heart lesions. If you've got too much iron in your bloodstream, then you've got a 10-fold risk for heart disease. So you can see that the conversation in the cholesterol space is pretty barbed wide, and there's just lots of different camps. But what Dr. J says to me, you got to take care of inflammation and oxidative stress. And if you do that, homocysteine's right, your iron labs are good, you've got plenty of vitamins and minerals, you're a long step in the right direction. Now, what ferritin also screws up is your pituitary gland. So excess iron can be stored in the pituitary there. And look at what the pituitary actually sends out with hormones. We're talking growth hormone, oxytocin, endorphins, your whole gonadotropin release hormone pulse generator, thyroid hormones, melanocyte-stimulating hormone, that keeps appetite at healthy levels, vasopressin and aldosterone for good blood pressure. There's just a lot of hormones that it's messing up there. So we can easily see now how the gut needs to be super healthy. Now, here's a big problem for a lot of people, and they don't understand this. Most of the condiments and foods have got these things called emulsifiers in them, and they act like a detergent and wash away. That's right, they wash away the protective lining of your gut. So this is Professor Huberman. He spoke about this on a podcast. Listen to this.
Today is that when you ingest those foods, you're bringing those emulsifiers into your gut, and those emulsifiers strip away the mucosal lining of the gut.
Okay, so I'll give you more insights on that right here, but I just want to play another video for you. Now, this is from a pretty smart dude, Dr. Daddis. So he's a PhD, DHSC, DCMS, MMS, FACN. So he's done, literally thousands of he's had patients go through his clinic. He's got lots of data. And this is what he says. Listen to this.
So inflammation in the gut activates gut immune cells. Those gut immune cells send messenger proteins to cells in the brain called neuroglia. Those neuroglia get activated, and then the brain gets inflamed. And when the brain gets inflamed, nerve conduction, synapses slow down. Inflammation in the brain slows down synapses, and patients just can't think, they can't focus, they can't get their thought process going on. So those are the things that happen with it. So basically, some people that have immune reactions to gluten, they get severe brain inflammation when they eat it. They can even have their blood-brain barrier, gut barrier breakdown. They can set up the stage for neurological autoimmunity. They can decrease blood flow to their brain. As their brain gets inflamed, their messenger synaptic pathways become slower, and they just don't function well. And they walk in the healthcare system and they get diagnosed with chronic depressive disorder or chronic anxiety disorder.
So when you got a sick gut, and lots of things can cause it too. And so you got a sick gut, and this is what happens in the scientific literature is they've shown this quite conclusively now. So when you've got a sick gut, it leads to anxiety and depressive-like behavior, comorbidities, including neuroinflammation, chronic psychosis, stress, such as anxiety and depression. This aggravates colitis by activating the HPA axis, which means more cortisol, disrupting the autonomic nervous system. And when you're producing way too much cortisol, you feel like garbage, and it completely depletes you of vitamins and minerals. Now, this is accompanied by an increase in the production of LPS, and this is really toxic stuff, and this translocates into the blood. Systemic inflammation, as you can see here, pro-inflammatory cytokines. So the gut has to be dialed in. Now, when we start working with people and they've gone through the system and they're still not quite feeling great, is what the next step we do. This is the next step, and then we do the gut health. We check their neurotransmitters. There's a simple urine test you can do in the morning that checks out your neurotransmitter levels. So as you can see here, his dopamine's gone, his norepinephrine's gone, his epinephrine's gone. So he doesn't have a lot of focus, he doesn't have a lot of energy, and he doesn't have a lot of motivation, drive when he wakes up in the morning. And to make matters worse, GABA and glutamate are down too. So functional medicine does the complete opposite as what classical medicine does. So you walk into the healthcare center, system and they give you drugs. They don't look at the root cause and start to solve that problem. And I'll come back to this slide in a second. I just need to play these two videos before I do, and I'll unpack what that means.
And so, yeah, come on down a little bit more. See, so right here.
Okay, so the bacteria. Yep.
Right. So that's where he said, this is your problem area, right?
Right, the bacteria. Yep. So,
and then,
yeah.
Or go down further, right down there. Yeah. So you'll see, he's like, you're at these bottom levels. Like, this is like your immune, right? So that's where you talked about the immunity.
Yep.
Gut and everything. So he's saying, yeah, this stuff is all like, this is the problem.
The gut.
And
yep.
Yeah. So here's the bad news. Like this, yep. You have this problem. He says, but the good news is we've identified it now and it is correctable. He said it will take several months to correct it. And so
as you can see there, what we learned from these functional doctors is that around about 70% of your immune function is in the gut. If you've got a sick gut, you're going to get sick yourself. So we've got to fix that issue. And it also, paradoxically, causes insulin resistance and inflammation.
Because of the insulin resistance that's created in your gut biome,
yep.
Metabolic stress and the inflammation that's created there, he says the glutamide.
So that was just a quick excerpt of showing you that it drives insulin resistance in and of itself. And when we come up to the next client shortly, you'll see how that crashes testosterone and increases estrogen production. So like this is a GI map, and you can see that this dude has got dysbiosis. So when you've got dysbiosis, you've got tau proteins, beta amyloids going up, which causes poor insulin signaling. Then you've got decreased motor performance. You go to the gym, you don't feel very strong. Your motor performance comes down. And then you've also got pro-inflammatory cytokines, and it's genotoxic. It's DNA damaging. So what the functional doctors get us to do is to get our clients onto a very high-quality probiotic, but also prebiotics. And the healthy strain are right here, and they bring down anxiety. They bring down, all of these learning difficulties and motor dysfunctions and dopaminergic and neurodegeneration issues. They bring them all down. But if you've got these species here, and there's a lot of different funky species too, you're just moving in the opposite direction. And then you go to the healthcare system and they prescribe you drugs, which they're not fixing the problem at all. So let's talk about why that first person that we showed you here, his insulin is good, but his free T is down and his sex hormone binding globulin is up. So as I mentioned earlier, if you got too much ferritin iron overload, that'll push up SHBG. And genetically, if you've got these genes, that can cause elevations in SHBG. I've got that, and my SHBG is in the butter zone. And you've got these other drivers right here. So if you take these off the table, and I'll show you how to do that on this slide here. If you take those off the table, then you're going to have good free T. And to get to that place, to understand how that's going to happen, I've just got this short video from Peter Attia.
For what's driving his SHBG. So there's basically three hormones. So genetics plays a huge role in this. There's no question that just out of the box, people have a different set point for SHBG. Mine is incredibly low. My SHBG is kind of in the 30s, 20s to 30s. But from a hormone perspective, there's basically three hormones that run it. So estradiol being probably the most important, insulin, and thyroxine. So we're going to look at all of those and decide if any of those are playing a role. So insulin suppresses it. So this is actually the great irony of helping a person get metabolically healthy is in the short run, you can actually lower their free testosterone, all things equal. Because as insulin comes down, SHBG goes up. And if testosterone hasn't gone up with it, you're lowering free testosterone.
So when your insulin comes up to healthy levels, and I'll explain what that is in a moment, it shuts down hepatic production of SHBG. Now, another important thing to understand about SHBG is it's got a 7-day half-life, which means it takes a full 14 days to come back down to healthy levels. Now, providing that you've got your iron sorted out and your thyroid and estrogen sorted out, that this is the next piece of the puzzle. Now, T4, which is thyroxine, as Peter said there, T4 is converted into T3, the active form. And about 60% happens in the liver. So we're converting T4 to T3 in the liver, and 20% happens in your gut. So if you've got elevations in T4, you can clearly see that the liver or the gut is pretty sick. So you kind of want your thyroid hormones both in the butter zone there. So it always comes back to that butter zone. Now, as Peter mentioned there, as insulin comes up to healthy levels, then it shuts down hepatic production of SHBG, and that's beneficial. So how do you do that? Well, once you get your insulin sensitivity back, when you do your fasting insulin, you can also do an oral glucose test. Your fasting insulin should be between 2 and 5. So when it's there, you have healthy insulin sensitivity. And that's exactly what reflects on this gentleman's insulin right here, 4.8. So he's in the butter zone. He has healthy insulin. But because he's doing pretty much a carnivore diet, he's done it for quite some time, there's not a lot of carbohydrates there. So what's the problem there? Well, insulin is never up. It's chronically down. So that's why his SHBG is going up. So 3 meals, you want to have a bit of carbohydrate, bit of carbohydrate, bit of carbohydrate. And that's just going to push insulin up to healthy levels. That's going to also help with testosterone production. And it's going to bring down hepatic production of SHBG. Now, you want to make sure that you check your glucose while you're doing this, because you don't want big rises and falls in glucose, because you remember at the beginning of this, when you have big swings, ups and downs in blood sugar, that causes testosterone production to come down. And I'll give you some more insights about how to solve this problem as we progress. So that is dude number 1. Dude number 2 here, the complete opposite. So here's a few of the labs. And as you can see, insulin is up, right? And SHBG is down. So it makes perfect sense that if you've got chronically elevated insulin, hepatic production of SHBG can't happen. And when you've got insulin resistance, unfortunately, you've got low testosterone. And this has been shown conclusively now. And to make matters worse, what little testosterone you've got left, because you've got too much insulin, all your androgens, testosterone, dihydrotestosterone, DHEA, go through aromatase, turn to estrogen. And when estrogen goes up, it shuts down testosterone production. Remember that slide that I showed you earlier? Estrogen too high, even if testosterone's 300, we're shut down. So you've got chronic low testosterone, and you can see it in the labs here. Fasting insulin, 17, SHBG goes to patterns that you can now recognize. So testosterone's low, free T's low, but estrogen's kind of high. And to make matters worse, when you've got insulin resistance, I've got 2 slides to go through here. It's a pretty big long-term health problem. I'll just play this video from Dr. Ken Berry. This is when I spoke to him. Listen to this.
Pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic, and they have no idea. Literally do not know this, even though they're damaging. Yeah. They're increasing their risk of erectile dysfunction, of heart attack, of stroke, of blindness, of every organ in their body shutting down and ceasing to function. But since their doctor says, well, you're relatively skinny, Mark, you've got a little belly pooch, but that's it. No big deal. We're not going to check any blood work on you. And you feel like shit. You got no energy. You got no get up and go. You're gaining weight. You feel like crap. But your doc says, well, you're skinny, therefore you're healthy, and they send you on your way. Every guy with any of these symptoms that we talk about, you need to go to your doctor and politely, respectfully demand those 5 tests. And
the problem becomes, as I've learned, work with a lot of people, they go to their GP or their MD in America, GP in Australia here, and the GP says, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Like a classic example last week, one of the dudes I'm helping would not test homocysteine. No, not doing it. So you've got to kind of do things on your own. I'll show you exactly how to do that. You can do this by yourself, or you can work with the right doctors. And there's a list of these doctors. But look at the problem with insulin resistance. And this is an Apex journal, Nature. Trends in insulin resistance, insights into mechanisms and therapeutic strategies. And this is huge because look at your heart. You've got hypertension and atherosclerosis, cardiomyopathy, enlarged heart, really terrible stuff. And look at your fat cells. They're leaching pro-inflammatory cytokines, right? Inflammation is up. That's long-term health consequences, as you saw in previous slides there. And your fat cells are working against you. And your muscles, you feel weak and fatigued. Why? Because you've got lipotoxicity and glucose intolerance. So glucose doesn't want to go into the muscles. And if you want to lift heavy weights and be very powerful, you got these fast twitch muscle fibers that can only use glucose. So think about it. You're there trying to lift heavy weights and be in the gym, but your muscles don't want to take up glucose. The fast twitch muscle fibers are like, Yeah, nah, we're not doing this today. So, you can see what's going on here. And then your liver taps out and you can see how important the liver is. Remember, T4, it's not active yet. You've got to convert into T3, and 60% happens in the liver and 20% happens in the gut. So if you've got a sick liver, you've got insulin resistance worse, you've got cirrhosis, you've got fatty liver disease, terrible stuff. And one of the worst things, your brain starts to fail on you. You've got cognitive decline, cerebral degradation, Alzheimer's, then a lot of cancers and chronic kidney disease. And if you're a lady, polycystic ovary syndrome shows up. Now, here's another research paper speaking to insulin resistance again. And remember, we've got an inappropriate upregulation of aromatase here. So we've got, as estrogen goes up, too much estrogen, testosterone shut down. So you've got low T, and what little testosterone you've got, namely free T, is aromatized into estrogen to take care of all of these things that are festering in your body, like erectile dysfunction, insulin resistance, hypertension, atherosclerosis, all of that shit. So it's a bit of a nightmare for a lot of people. So as you can see, the V8 Diagnostic gives you a framework so you can find out why you're showing up like that. You don't have a lot of V8 grunt. And if you're a younger gentleman, 4 to 8 weeks, right? And if there's not too much going wrong underneath the hood of your inner V8, but if you're an older gentleman, it can take 3, 6, 12 months to fix those problems. But, once you know how to do it, you know how to do it. You just put in the work and the effort and you'll get there. And then you know how to live the life that keeps you there. And that's an amazing thing. So let's now talk about the tools we can use. I've given you the framework. I want to give you some tools to start enhancing testosterone production right now. So tool number one, as I mentioned on the beginning of this is how testosterone is produced here. One really important thing that your ball sac needs, this is a Leydig cell inside the testes there. You need healthy mitochondria. So this is the mitochondria there, and this is a blown up version right here of the mitochondria, and I'll get to that in a moment. I just want to refresh your mind. So how do you enhance testosterone productions in males, as you see here? The mechanism by which this mainly occurs is enhancing luteinizing hormone. Remember, the gonadotropin releasing hormone system has a pulse generator, pulsing out LH every few hours. So we can increase the pulse frequency, as I mentioned and showed you that study, and we can increase the amplitude, which means more LH to make more testosterone. And then we need to increase healthy levels of cholesterol in the testes. Now, Dr. J, when he did his 5-year PhD, it was also on cholesterol. And I'm going to show you what Dr. J believes is the worst thing for oxidized cholesterol, bad cholesterol. Then you've got to reduce oxidative stress and lipid peroxidization. Now we can start to see how that's going to occur. And then we have to enhance the activity of the antioxidant enzymes, normalize blood glucose, right? So that's why we're going to have stable blood glucose. And then we've got to increase blood flow to the testes, and that increases testicular weight and recycles testosterone receptors. So the pulse generator sends out every 2 to 3 hours LH, makes its way to the ball sac, the testes. It goes through this energy pathway. So you need ATP, right, to make testosterone. So that's thing number one. LH goes in. Number two, you need energy. Number three is nitric oxide production. So you need healthy nitric oxide production. And a lot of people don't have that. Then when these three pathways converge down to the star protein here, they go through these two protein kinases there. So that's step number 4. And they diverge together onto that star protein. And they say, hey, healthy cholesterol, come into the testes and let's make some testosterone. So cholesterol is converted into testosterone. And the first step that happens when cholesterol comes in is in the mitochondria here, right? We need healthy mitochondria. And then the cholesterol is enzymatically converted into pregnenolone. It's exported out of the mitochondria. It goes through all these enzymes, progesterone, androstenedione, then free T. And then you've got your free T. And remember the pulse generator every 2 to 3 hours. But if you got high homocysteine, you got oxidative stress, your CRP is too high. Can you see what's going on here? Right? You're making too much estrogen, you're shutting down, you've got low T. It's driving metabolic disease, metabolic syndrome, and you just feel like shit. Now, inside the mitochondria, they use oxygen, and when you breathe, the oxygen goes in and it turns into superoxide, and that's nasty shit. That causes oxidative stress. So you've got to handle that oxidative stress. So how does the body do it? Well, remember I mentioned that you've got this gene called SOD, superoxide dismutase. So what has to happen for that enzyme to work is MN here is manganese. So manganese binds to superoxide dismutase 2 and turns that nasty shit into less nasty shit called hydrogen peroxide. Now, glutathione over here turns it into harmless water. So the oxygen is basically turned into water. But if you don't have enough manganese, and the point I'm trying to illustrate right here, Dr. Rob again, listen carefully.
That is one part of the equation, right? It works in the brain. The other part is the testicles. Do the testicles have enough of the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and cholesterol to be able to generate more testosterone? So there's two parts to that equation.
So you've got to have good nutrient status. If you've got poor nutrient status, what's happening? You've got a lot of oxidative stress you're not handling. And that's the result. Remember, quite simply, that oxidative stress takes your free T and your DHEA through aromatase, turns into estrogen, and you've got necrosis, which is tissue damage. That's not good. You've got DNA damage, decreased hormone production, reproductive dysfunction leading to infertility. What we're going to start to do now is what Dr. J gets me to do, which is, we've got to solve all these problems for the pulse generators, gonadotropin releasing hormone system, LH and FSH to the testes every 2 or so hours to keep free T nice and high. Now, high glucose and high insulin, no good. She's going to shut us down. So we're going to start to solve that problem. So what I just drew there, that's bad blood sugar. We want stable blood sugar. And you can have carbs. And as I mentioned there, they're beneficial to keep SHBG down. So this is Dr. J just speaking to the fact that he did a 5-year PhD on cholesterol.
By the way, I did a 5-year PhD on the topic of cholesterol and sex hormones. So I'm very qualified to talk about this.
So, as you can now appreciate, we've got to have good nutrient status, like, manganese there, like that's crucial, but you've got zinc and copper, like all the vitamins and minerals need to be optimal. And if you want to know how to do that, drop a comment below, and I'm more than happy to do a video on that, because it's something we've had to solve, myself and everybody that we help. So if you want more information about optimal vitamin and mineral status, drop a comment below. But what we've got to do is get rid of this ROS, which is oxidative stress. That's what the science is called, reactive oxygen species. And we got to stop, the homocysteine levels from being too high because they cause lesions on the artery wall there. And if you've got that genetic mutation, the SOD2 gene, we've really got to make sure iron levels are good and ferritin. Now, here's the problem right here, oxidized LDL. So let's talk about it. Oxidized LDL. Now, when scientists actually test out cholesterol, when they test cholesterol for oxidative stress, guess what they actually use? Glucose-induced oxidative stress. So that's why we want glucose at healthy levels, insulin at healthy levels, and we want a nice little rise and fall, none of this big blood sugar swings. And one of the main reasons for that is your endothelium here, that's the protective lining of your vasculature system, your arteries, the microvasculature in your brain. And guess what glucose and insulin does? Well, in humans, glucose inhibits growth hormone release, and elevated insulin levels, insulin resistance reduces growth hormone release. So it's a double whammy. So why is that a problem? In this book, Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, PhD neuroscientist, without growth hormone replenishing the lining of your blood vessels called the endothelium, your protective lining of your artery, they're shorn and stripped of their integrity. Vessels rupture, heart attack and stroke become very common. So can you see what the problem is at the moment? There's a bit of a problem with this when you look at the testosterone production, and oxidative stress is going to tank your free T, right? Tank your free T. And look what else growth hormone does. So number one, it rips off body fat, potently stimulates in humans, the release of fat from your fat cells to metabolize it as energy. So think about that. You're missing out on the power of fat loss because your glucose and insulin are screwed up. And then number three, it helps build muscle alongside testosterone. And what we're interested in rebuilding yourself, especially the blood vessels, right? The growth hormone rejuvenates and repairs the tissues and the organs, the brain, the heart, the blood vessels, as we now know, the ovaries if you're a lady, the ball sack, the testes if you're a dude, the intestines and the gut, the kidneys, muscle, including the smooth muscle of the penis alongside testosterone. Then you've got the cartilage, so you don't have knee and hip replacements, bone marrow for a great immune response, liver, you can fix your liver, and central nervous system. So we got to fix this glucose problem. Now, what we've learned working with Dr. J is that cholesterol, you can have low cholesterol, and that's what this schematic shows. So you've got low amounts of cholesterol here. You see that? But here's the problem. You've got these two here, which are really healthy, especially number one, and these two are oxidized LDL. So the more oxidative stress and inflammation you're under, cholesterol gets oxidized. So even though this dude's got low cholesterol, a bit of it's oxidized. So that's not good. And look over here. This is a person with good levels of cholesterol, and it's all in the healthy range, right? Most of it's in the really healthy range. It's going to go into the testes, make a lot of testosterone. Now, listen to this. This is Dr. J and me on a group call with the dudes that we help. On a lab panel that looks for oxidized cholesterol, is the values that they represent, is that a good?
Those ones are okay, yeah, because those aren't based on average Americans. Those are based on actual studies that aren't corrupted by pharma because they don't sell any drugs to lower oxidized LDL. So they don't have any influence. They don't screw with the range because they don't see any need to make more money by screwing with the range.
Yeah.
Oxidized LDL is one that you can trust. But if you're even a little high, even if you're a little high on oxidized LDL and it's in the range, but you're on the upper end of the range, I'd still get a little nervous maybe. But yeah, that's a great blood test.
Yeah, oxidized. All right. So oxidized LDL is the enemy, and you can do an advanced lipid panel to check that. Now, this is, again, Dr. J with me helping dudes out in a group call. Listen, mainstream doctors say the 100 is okay, but it's really not, is it?
Oh, it's insane. It's completely insane. What they do in the medical system with sugar is they wait until you get full-blown diabetes before they like to complain about it, because that's when they can start selling drugs. It always goes back to the drug sales and how they're trying to manipulate things for that. But you don't want to wait until you get diabetes to pay attention to your blood sugar. You want to be optimized, right? That's the whole goal in all of this.
All right. So this here is a very significant study that Dr. J shared with me over 22 years of non-diabetic men. And they showed if your fasting blood glucose is over 85, significantly higher mortality rate, cardiovascular disease. And don't panic, I'll show you how to get this right. And it was done for a lot of men, 2,000 men over 22 years. Now, the amazing thing, and you've heard me speaking about this omega index here, right? This is really powerful. So the omega-3s, right? EPA and DHA, the omega-3. So EPA is the docosahexaenoic acid, and DHA, the other omega-3, is the docosahexaenoic acid. And when you have those regularly, they're incorporated into your cells and your LDL cholesterol. And guess what it does? EPA, the omega-3 right here, blocks free radical propagation through the lipid bilayer, preventing lipid peroxidization and cholesterol domain formation. So it's protective of your cholesterol. It's stopping it from becoming oxidized. And that's exactly what we want. And right here, you can see this here. We need to stop oxidative stress and lipid peroxidization. That's what these omega-3s are doing. And we need to enhance the activity of the antioxidant enzymes. So check this out. After 3 months of nutritional intervention, we observed statistically significant differences in the ApoB, APO1 ratio, which is your cholesterol, fancy word for that, and glycated hemoglobin, your A1C, and increases in SOD, superoxide dismutase, and GPX, glutathione, the master antioxidants, and better LDL, much less oxidized LDL. Our results showed that a diet of a 1-to-1 ratio of EPA, the omega-3, and DHA, the other omega-3, improved many of the oxidative stress parameters, superoxide dismutase, glutathione, plasma antioxidant capacity, and cardiovascular risk factors. Damn. So what you can do, there should be information below to get your omega index checked. And most of the people that we check are here in the red and orange. Warning, you don't want to be there. You want to be over here in the green. Then you're protected, right? Then you won't have this oxidized cholesterol And when you're trying to make your testosterone, right here, this oxidized cholesterol is like, I'm busted. I can't work, right? So like this person here's got low cholesterol. So he's got a little bit, little bit to make the testosterone there. But guess what? A third of the brain's dry weight is cholesterol. And cholesterol is all over your body. Every single cell has cholesterol for stability. Cholesterol isn't the enemy. Oxidized cholesterol, that's the enemy. All right. So I think we've talked about that enough. Now, tool number 4 here is grab this book by Dr. James DiNicolantonio. It will show you how to fix your insulin resistance and your blood sugar. And look what he's discovered too. This is a very recent book published this year in 23. You've got a coronary regression, 87. Remember, Dr. J said 85, so very close. But you've got better outcomes, coronary regression. But when you're above that, 87 to 106, you've got a slight increase in heart disease. Here, pretty big increase, and here, massive increase. Now, that's where a lot of people are in these two brackets here. So they've got accelerated coronary atherosclerotic progression. And more information right here. So when you've got, starting at 85 milligrams per deciliter, the risk of cardiovascular disease begins to increase. And by 140 milligrams per deciliter, the risk is already 58% higher. Postprandial glucose level of 87, there is coronary atherosclerotic regression. And remember, the data's there. And this is a pretty typical result from what we call the CGM, constant glucose monitor. And if you want to know more about how to optimize that, drop a comment below. I'm happy to do another video on that. But you can see this person that I'm helping, they've got unstable blood sugar, and it's way too high. Like, we need to get it down here like this. And it's starting too high. So that's atherosclerotic progression. And it's way too high, and you're close to 140, 150 there. And that is how we're going to start to piece this together. So as I've learned from these experts, Dr. Daddis here, he's got a great book. He's got a couple of beautiful publications. Why My Brain Isn't Working is one of them. And this is the difference between standard labs and V8 labs, the V8 Diagnostic. It can be frustrating when your blood results are normal, but your health isn't. All right. And this gentleman here is a functional doctor. Listen to this.
Have you been told by your doctor that your labs are normal, yet you completely feel like crap? Are you battling with symptoms like fatigue or joint pain, or your hormones are all jacked up, or maybe you can't lose weight regardless of your workout or your diet? What I need to tell you is you're not alone. My name's Dr. Greg, and I practice something called functional medicine.
All right. So you get the idea. We've been led astray for a very long time. We've got homocysteine. We've got liver issues. We've got methylation issues. So that's why we do the V8 Diagnostic. You got to find out why you're tapping out, because you shouldn't be tapping out. And Dr. J and I've got some information linked below. You can download two 24-page PDFs. One's about optimal blood labs, and the other one is about lifestyle changes to optimize energy and testosterone production. So that's linked below. You should see that. It's what I call the V8 rebuild. All right. Now, let's just quickly explore the 19 causes of inappropriate upregulation of all of your androgens, testosterone, and also DHEA. Now, hydrotestosterone can't be converted to estrogen because testosterone can only go to dihydrotestosterone or estrogen, and dihydro can't go that way. So think about it. If you've got a lot of oxidative stress and inflammation playing out, you're missing out on dihydrotestosterone. And do you remember why dihydro is powerful? Right there. Number one, dihydrotestosterone has a 2 to 5 times higher binding affinity to the androgen receptor. All right. And number two here, a 10-fold higher potency in inducing androgen receptor functions. Build muscle, drop body fat, go into your brain, lower fear and anxiety, and increase motivation to go out there and become the man that you were born to be. So think about that. If all of these things are playing out, and for a lot of people they are, then you've got low T and you're wasting all your free T coming this way, turning into estrogen. You're missing out the powerhouse of dihydro. Think about that. It is super powerful. So down the list here, we've got poor blood labs, right? The V8 framework. Then negative emotion. So when you're in negative emotion, as we showed you earlier, cortisol and dinorphin shut us down. And then it biases testosterone to go to estrogen. And poor sleep, of course. We got to sleep. So if you want any more information about any of this, drop a comment below. Your Omega index. So I've got information about getting it to above 8%. As you've just seen now, it's going to increase antioxidant capacity, protect you from heart disease, largely. And then a higher body fat. So when you've got too much body fat, you've got more aromatase activity. So the fat cells are packed full of aromatase. So it's a bit of a catch-22 there. Then heavy metals and stored endocrine disrupting chemicals and iron overload. Now, just to speak about stored endocrine disruptors, when I started work with Dr. J, he said that these chemicals and personal care products that we've been exposed to, like they're everywhere, they can be stored in our tissues and organs. And when we try to drop body fat, the chemicals come out of the fat and into the bloodstream, and they mimic estrogen and they shut down testosterone production. But as a double whammy, they cause oxidative stress and inflammation. So it's accelerated. And listen to this excerpt of one of the first conversations I had with Dr. J.
In your fat cells.
Oh, yeah. All of them. A lot of them.
All of them. All right. So let me just create this scenario. So you've decided that you want to lose weight, and you've decided to do that. You start losing a bit of body fat, and all these estrogens are liberated into the fat cells. And I saw a research paper that you showed that some human fat cells have got, I think, 16,000, is that right, nanograms in the fat cells.
Oh,
so
yeah.
basically, you're flooding your blood with all this estrogen. What's going to happen then? Testosterone, free testosterone goes down. So your brain doesn't work properly. It's like, you lose your will to do the diet, and it makes muscle preservation harder. It makes fat loss harder. It makes everything harder. And you're fighting this, trying to lose weight, and you've got all these estrogens being flooded into the system. Is that a fair call?
Oh, yeah, you got it exactly. I mean, I can tell you read the book carefully. I appreciate that. And that's a huge epiphany, even for me, when I was kind of going through this process and learning about this, writing the book. And, the average life of a fat cell is 1.5 years, which they've discovered from these atomic bomb studies, that where people got exposed to radiation. Right. But they found fat cells that can survive in your body 10 years. And so if you're loading up these fat cells with all these estrogen chemicals, and so if you're loading the fat cells with estrogen chemicals, those chemicals are sitting in the cell saying, hey, hang on to fat. Don't get rid of fat, right? So on top of all this problems with demotivation, with empathy, all that stuff you talked about with lower testosterone, which is true, then the fat cells also don't want to get rid of the fat. And then even if they do, they're, it's dumping more of this blood, and it's just a vicious cycle. So it causes a lot of weight gain plateaus. And that's where.
All right. So you can see that's a problem when you try and drop body fat. It takes you out. It shuts down testosterone, especially free T. So I've got a link below. And again, it is what we call the V8 rebuild. So I've got the blood labs in there. It's all free. And back over here, the protocol to fix that problem, dropping the body fat, accelerated fat loss, is in what we call the Hunter method. So both of those PDFs are in there, and I've also got videos in there to support you the whole way through. Then you've got elevations in estrogen. So if you've got bad estrogen genetics, that can be an issue. If you've got optimal testosterone, as we've just now explored, but suboptimal free T, that takes a bit of time to fix. Can take a couple of months to 6 months. Autoimmune disease, food sensitivities, antigens and haptens. So basically just environmental toxins and foods that your DNA doesn't mesh with. Then if you've got poor liver, you're a mouth breather, leaky gut, leaky lungs, and leaky brain. So you can have all of those things that are leaky. Or performance-enhancing drug abuse, that can be a bit of a problem. So the heavy ones take the biggest amount of time to fix, but you can fix them, and that's the point. Then you've got the light clamps, like foreign estrogens. So you eliminate the chemicals and also xenoestrogens coming into your body, or circadian rhythm. So sun and sleep are huge, easy to fix. A low-calorie diet, that'll tank your testosterone and your thyroid. And you use the Matador when you're dropping body fat, and I've got that in the Hunter method there. So all those solutions are in there. Then a DNA inappropriate diet. So if you're eating foods that don't mesh with you, it causes a leaky gut, it causes systemic inflammation, and that takes you out and screws up your sleep. And if you eat Western food, it's just toxic. And I've got the solution in the Hunter method there, and poor nutrient status. So I don't have poor nutrient status in there because that's a bit of a barbed wire conversation. But if you want to know more about that, let me know. So that is it, legends. Let me know what you think, and get the blood labs, the V8 diagnostic, and start rebuilding yourself into the man that you were born to be, because